Evening, everyone. My name is Manai Tafari. I'm a staff attorney here at Queens Defenders. I have been an attorney here in New York going on about a dozen years, and I am overjoyed to have a discussion here today about the Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment with Mr. Oral Nick Hillary.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today on this Constitutional Day event. My name is Nick Hillary. I'm the educational specialist at Queens Defenders. I've been there now for 2 years, going on 3. And I'm very excited to have this discussion with you all today. Welcome.
All right, so we'll keep this formally informal, and what we will do, we will leave some time at the end for any questions that anyone may have at all. So just to get into it, the Constitution was written in 1787. And the Bill of Rights were codified in 1791. Now, that is a very, very long time ago, 1791. And as we all know here, Black people, unfortunately, were in bondage up to 1865. However, as of 1865, with the 13th Amendment, and after the Civil War was fought, Black people had as much freedom as white people in this country, which means that George Washington and Denzel Washington, after 1865, both had equal rights under the law. If you ask me, the gentleman on the right looks quite dapper as well. So going into the Constitution, the Founding Fathers have been studied, analyzed, and their views have been broken down for centuries, for 234 years. But the one thing that no one has ever been able to say is that these men were not extremely, extremely intelligent. The Constitution was written by men who were very learned. They were enlightened. And before they wrote the Constitution, they studied and they researched the relationship between men and government for centuries and millennia. For example, the Roman Senate met at Capitol Hill. Our Senate meets on Capitol Hill as well. So this goes back centuries. They put in a lot of work to ensure that people are protected and have rights against their government, and that government cannot use their power to prosecute people or persecute people. To that end, the Bill of Rights that was written and codified in 1791, 5 of these amendments, 5 of the 10 amendments in the Bill of Rights, have to do with the protection of the accused in a criminal court. So we will speak about the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment, which Justice 456 was formed on. But the 7th Amendment is the right to a jury trial, and the 8th Amendment is the right against cruel and unusual punishment. And again, the reason why 5 of the 10 amendments, 50% of the Bill of Rights, were written to protect criminal defendants is because if the government chooses to go against any faction, they can. However, the Bill of Rights, specifically these 3 amendments, will protect you if you know them. And the way we break it down at Justice 456, we say, I will not consent to a search today. I have nothing to say. My attorney is on the way. And that is shorthand, or what we used to call Cliff Notes, for what the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment are. What we will do, we will be reading the 4th Amendment, having a small discussion, the 5th and also the 6th, but a very easy jingle to remember right now is, I will not consent to a search today. I have nothing to say, and my attorney is on the way. And if you could remember that simple jingle, which is much easier than stop, drop, shut them down, open up shop, you will have the power to protect yourself.
So the vision of Justice 456 is simply to educate the youth and the broader community of their rights guaranteed under the US Constitution. The Constitution is our solution. And so I will turn over to Manai as he goes into the reading of the 4th Amendment.
In that vein, the Constitution is the solution. So a couple of weeks ago, my 8-year-old said to me, Daddy, I'm a great reader. I'm just not good at reading out loud. So with that being said, here we go. The Fourth Amendment, the right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So again, what we say is, I will not consent to a search today. And that's your Fourth Amendment right there in a nutshell. And it's very important to remember that because you should never consent to a search. And the most important thing to remember also is that many wrongful convictions happen because people have consented to searches by law enforcement that neither have a warrant or probable cause. And once you consent to a search, it's much harder for your attorney to defend you. So the takeaway is, I will not consent to a search today. And that is the cliff notes from the Fourth Amendment. That's the takeaway from this Fourth Amendment.
Thank you so much for covering the Fourth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment, the right to remain silent, due process of law. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime, unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. And the cliff notes for the Fifth Amendment, what we, Justice 456, is promoting is, I have nothing to say. Words can be misinterpreted. Words can be misconstrued. Words can be miscommunicated. When the words that you say are extremely important, it is important that they be vetted, analyzed for accuracy, to be ensured they represent the meaning you are attempting to get across. This is why the president, senators, governors, and congressmen have full-time staff to vet the words they say. If you are a potential suspect in a criminal matter, the words you say are extremely important. And so Justice 456 is encouraging you to remember, I have nothing to say when it comes to the Fifth Amendment.
And finally, we move on to the Sixth Amendment, which is the right to a speedy trial by a jury, witnesses, and counsel. This Sixth Amendment reads, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. Again, when you're in this situation, what you say is, my attorney is on her way, or my attorney is on the way. It's a very simple thing. So within this entire paragraph, the little bit that you need is my attorney's on the way, because in this country, regardless of your wealth, regardless of race, regardless of creed, regardless of nationality. When you're accused of a crime, you get the right to have an attorney. And that attorney must be provided, whether or not you can afford one, it's provided free of charge. So by saying my lawyer is on the way or my attorney is on the way, Justice 456 is explaining and to people, especially the youth, that you may not have been in trouble previously, but if you do get in trouble, or if you feel as though there's a potential because of how you feel that you might get in trouble, what's important to say is my lawyer's on the way. You do not need to speak to anyone until your lawyer gets there, because your lawyer has your best interest at heart. Here at the Queens Defenders, we take seriously defending our clients. There are other organizations as well, like Legal Aid Society and other public defendants, who will make sure that you get represented properly and that the things you say won't be used against you. So again, very important to stress, my lawyer is on the way. The Sixth Amendment was in the Constitution, was in the Bill of Rights, that again was from way back in 1791. However, it was not until a gentleman by the name of Earl Gideon, who had a case in front of the Supreme Court in 1963, Earl Gideon petitioned the court and explained, and the court agreed, that every single citizen should have an attorney. The reason why Mr. Gideon's case is so important, and the reason why Mr. Gideon's story is so important, is because he was not an attorney, he was a layperson. And since 1791 to 1963, it was a layperson who stood up and said, the Constitution says I should have a lawyer, I should have a lawyer. And what's important for the youth to get, and the people in the community to get, and what Justice 456 will be pushing, is that regular people, or what the law calls lay people, have to understand these simple amendments, which is why we're breaking them down in an extremely simple manner. And again, I will not consent to a search today. I have nothing to say, and my attorney is on the way. And this story, actually, the reason why we focus so much on these three amendments and understood the power of the three amendments is because that's what Mr. Hillary used. And he'll take a couple of minutes and explain his story and why he was able to maintain his freedom by wrapping himself with these three amendments.
Thank you so much, Munai. So my story, the Nick Hillary story, in 2011, 10 years ago to the month, I was wrongfully accused of taking the life of a child. As a result, I was indicted twice, not once, twice. I was locked up twice. The longest stint was 70 days, and countless bail hearing during those 70 days. I was offered bail twice. First in the amount of 75,000, that was changed to 200,000 the second time. In 2016, after 5 years of battling the judicial system for my liberty, and after 2 weeks of trial, and that being a bench trial, meaning only the judge, no jury, I was acquitted. And since then, I have made it my mission and my priority that every person, as Mr. Tafari mentioned, especially lay people, I will share the importance of the Fourth, the Fifth, and the Sixth Amendment. And as a result, that gave rise to today's discussion, partnering with Queens Defenders, who, as Munai just mentioned, fought and will continue to fight tirelessly for their clients. We bring you the importance of the three amendments, the Fourth, the Fifth, and the Sixth.
And again, just to add before we open it for questions, if you do some research, and I know that if you are on here listening, that means you take the Constitution and the rights of people seriously. If you do some research, you'll find that a lot of these wrongful convictions happen because somebody violated the well, not somebody, law enforcement, police officers, district attorneys violated someone's Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment. And the big part of the reason why that was violated is because people did not know, because there has been a disconnect between 1787 and 1865. And many of these people who are in law enforcement don't seem to realize that the Constitution and these amendments now apply to Black people as well, and to poor people as well. So our job is to educate people, because once people are educated, then they will become more empowered. And once you hear the message, then you also become a messenger and you start spreading it. So that being said, we will open it up if anyone has any questions for Mr. Hillary or myself regarding the amendments. We hope that this will be an annual event on Constitution Day to read these 3 amendments, to invite people to read the amendments in years to come, other people who we believe are doing the great work that everyone on here is doing as well.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having this. My question is regards to post 9/11 technology and how it affects our enforcement of the Fourth Amendment. Particularly, we have MC catchers, we have devices used by the police that intrude on our privacy and circumvent the Fourth Amendment. How do we adapt to that? Thank you.
That's a great question. And the fact that you're asking that question means that you really, you get what this Fourth Amendment thing is and what it means. And what everyone should know is that what you might think is private is not private. And the first thing that happens, not when you're charged with a crime, the first thing that happens once they start looking at you as a suspect is your Facebook account, your Instagram account, everything gets pulled up. So I think part of this education is also explaining to people that these technological advances are not as safe and secure as we might think they are. And I think people who are in the younger generation might even be more aware of this than people who've hit the age of 35, 40 or up. But that's an absolutely great point. And I think a part of that too is education, because even though the Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment applies, in certain instances when you're dealing with private companies that you're voluntarily putting your information out on, it very much may not. And that's public access that the police can have access to, district attorneys might have access to. So it's about being careful with your electronic footprint and just being aware. But that's a great question.
Hi, good afternoon, Nick and Minai. My question is Nick, when you were in custody with the police, were you interrogated and did you make any statements? And then if you did, how did that help or hurt your case?
Thank you for such a wonderful question, Ms. J. I was in police custody for over 12 hours, and I was asked countless questions, all of which I did not answer. And that was the key thing. They continued to ask, but I did not provide any answer. And the only reason why I was able to do that was because I was aware of my right, the Fifth Amendment right, the right to remain silent, the right to not speak without counsel. And just that alone, I realized was a key reason, because, I remembered when a question was posed to the chief of the police department at the time. The reason he gave why they came at me was because I was not cooperating. That was the phrase. I was not cooperating. And as a result, I went through the ordeal. So, they will use fancy terms. They will tell you things. Okay, you let me know. You tell me this, I'll send you home. That's all a plot of a ploy. And no one wants to be sitting in a police station. As soon as they hear something that will allow them to go, they will want to talk. But my recommendation is, if it means you have to sit there for 24 hours until you get representation, you need to do that, because They will tell you just about anything to get you to say something, and that's what they need. They will take your words, misrepresent, misconstrued to get to exactly where they want. So, you know, I was interrogated for 12 hours, and so I remained silent, and I think that definitely afforded me the ability to be sitting here sharing my story today. So thank you for such a wonderful question, Ms. J.
And just to piggyback off that, because I was able to do a deposition with the chief of police and the lead investigator. And when I deposed them in Mr. Hillary's civil suit, the question I asked was, why was he a suspect? And their response was, or the chief's response was, because his story didn't add up. And when I asked what his story was, they said, well, we didn't have one because he wouldn't talk to us. So this is when you see the type of logic when you're being targeted. And if you're not intelligent, and if you don't understand these things now, and if you don't have people who've lived through it explaining it to you, you may be going in innocently, think you're helping the situation. Because I always say many a Black man has entered a police station as a witness and left as a convict, or just haven't left, they've died in jail. So you need to hear these stories from people who've been there to understand that when it comes to you, do not trust anyone at all except the Almighty and the lawyer who's there to represent you. But you need to be very careful about making sure that you're respectful, but you never cooperate and you never speak.
All right, we have one more question.
Yeah, Manny, where did you get that mug, first of all? And second of all, Mr. Hillary, you indicated that you were interrogated for 12 hours and that you did not speak to them. Did you request an attorney at any time during that period of time? And if so, did they honor that request?
Yeah, thank you for that question again. Yes, I did invoke my Sixth Amendment, and I must say, when I did, to my surprise, the law enforcement had no idea what I was talking about. They were very surprised when I said, I want to invoke my Sixth Amendment, because oftentimes they have heard the Fifth being invoked. But when I did that, they continued. They tried relentlessly, to the point in which I was trying to leave the room that I was in, and I was physically barred from leaving. And at that point, as Manai mentioned, be respectful. I pulled back. I realized what was going on at the time. And then after the fact, maybe 4 hours, they allowed me to speak to an attorney. But I did, and they used what I classified as a delay tactics just to try and encourage you to speak. So thank you for that question.
And the mug is my son's. Mug is my son's as well.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm just curious because oftentimes we see the news where someone is stopped by the police and they refuse to cooperate, in the sense that they refuse to allow the police to search. And it becomes this bigger issue. It becomes this huge thing where they end up getting arrested nevertheless. So I'm just curious. I understand the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th, but as you mentioned, Nick, do the police know it, right? So if you invoke all of those amendments, will they still violate and arrest you just because you don't want them to search you, or you don't want to talk to them? It's something that I've noticed over time, and I was just curious.
I'll take a dive at it, and then hopefully the attorney will shed his knowledge on it. But from my experience, as I've always shared with anyone in general, be respectful. That will diffuse a lot. Invoking your 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment in that scenario, it does not guarantee that the law enforcement is going to stop doing what he or she is doing. However, you being aware that your rights is being violated especially after invoking that, provides you a transcript to pursue legal course beyond that. So that's the key thing. Oftentimes, law enforcement will hear that, but they will continue to push the envelope, trying to get you to lose your cool, which now gives them the upper hand. So as long as you maintain a respectful dialogue and be compliant without incriminating yourself, then that should provide you with a footprint for legal passage beyond that if your right becomes violated within those instances. So I'm fully aware of what your question is, Heather, and we have all seen it. And oftentimes it escalates into a situation in which it shouldn't have. But as long as citizens are aware, and that's, for me, that is the key thing. They're not aware of what their rights are. And most importantly, they're not aware of when they are being violated. And so if you are aware of what they are and when they are being violated, it should more empower you to relax and stay calm, knowing that you have legal course to address that at a later date.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, hi, Nick. Peter Dufault, hi. Yeah, I think with all the technical, you could say their developments, at least locally in New York, the body cameras and so forth that the police have to wear. If you do invoke your rights, there and the body cameras being worn, obviously that's something that may not be able to be be questioned by the authorities. It'll be very clear and will be preserved. Of course, upstate where you were, I don't think they're using those kind of facilities, but we do have some protection here. I don't know, Mani, I wonder if you know, Mani, if detectives are using those. I don't think so, but I don't know whether they do or not. Do you know? In New York, for instance.
What most of the discovery I'm getting body cameras. I'm sorry I came in a little bit late. I think that's the question. What I'm getting in discovery, I see a lot of body worn cameras when they are approaching our client or the first.
Oh, definitely.
The first time they speak.
But do you think that the detectives are also wearing those body cams when further later on when you're in the precinct, for instance? Do you think?
Maybe not, but in a lot of the interrogation rooms, it's also recorded.
Yes.
But the point that we're trying to get, and we want it to be almost a cultural thing when we're done, is that it's so ingrained that you just don't talk, that they cannot misconstrue your words, and you know what these amendments are. So if it becomes cultural, it's almost like a community policy when it becomes cultural, right? That's what culture means. And we're going to have a much easier job as lawyers, as social workers, as people who are fighting oppression, if the people who we're defending understand this a little better.
Gotcha.
But thanks for the question, Defoe.
Thanks. It's a scary story, Nick. It's a scary story. But I'm glad it turned out well, man. Oh,
Yes, Peter, appreciate that. And like I said, Justice 456, the hope for the future is that it will help to prevent many more of these from happening.
Yes, why is not properly funding a public defender's program not considered a constitutional violation? Because that directly affects the ability to get representation. Public defenders, from what I understand, are very dedicated but swamped. So is there any sort of, thank you.
Yeah, yet another Yet another great question, JP. And that's something that's really important, because what is a Sixth Amendment if the Sixth Amendment really isn't reaching everybody, or if your lawyer is so swamped that you're not getting the proper representation? As you well know, John Paul, most of the people who are targeted by the criminal justice system, the poor, the Black, the oppressed, they don't have a lot of resources, which then means that they need the public defenders to support them. And I think that's something that every lawyer, whether you're with the public bar or the private bar, everyone should support good public defense. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. And the guys who wear the bigger hats here can understand that, but we do fight for funding for our clients as well. And part of what we see our jobs as, we're here at Justice 456 pushing this message, is to make sure that you have the power in your hands. So it's not a fish, it's basically a fishing pole, because if you know the 456, the chances are you'll give your lawyer a much better feet to stand on, and you'll also make it a lot more difficult for law enforcement to target you, because you're going to have that protection like a bulletproof vest, knowing that 456, where you'll have the upper hand, or at least be in a much better position when you're targeted, because that seems to be what happens, not if you're targeted. And just to piggyback off that, John Paul, and it's a great point you make, but these amendments are serious. And when you start thinking it in a deep way, the way you are, John Paul, you start seeing that, you know, the Constitution is the solution. You need the Sixth Amendment, so you need to support public defenders. You're sending people upstate for 5 years or 3.5 years for every single gun possession. Is that violating the Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment? You have, you know, people being judged by all white juries. Is that a jury of your peers with the Seventh Amendment? So the more you study these things and the more, you know, you start to dig a little bit below the surface analysis, you see that these constitutional rights, when we hold on to them and when we understand them, there's a lot further to go. But initially, it's teaching the youth, teaching the lay people that I will not consent to a search today. I have nothing to say, and my lawyer is on the way. But this goes deep, and it's about getting the people to understand that.
You can always sign up for more information on any future Justice 456 events at queensdefenders.org/justice456, where you can sign up for the newsletter, and also we'll be posting any videos, and more information is available there.
Thank you very much, everyone, for sharing your time with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. We greatly appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us today. And we look forward to being with you at future Justice 456 event.